straight to Zach Gelb. He joins us, Infinity Sports Network. He's on his way to a Mets game as they are in the NLCS against the Dodgers. Series tied at 1-1. Zach, you're living your life with this Mets stuff, huh?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. This team, to start off the season, you thought that they were going to be finishing in the bottom of the basement, and they've went on a improbable run. And I feel pretty good about their chances to advance to the World Series. If they take 2 out of 3 at home, which they're more than capable of doing so, I think they'll find a way to get one out in L.A. and then be off to the World Series. We could possibly get a Subway Series with the Mets and the Yankees. So who would have thought that?
Zach, college football this week. We know you don't have you long before you got to catch a train, but this was a crazy week of college football. Did your opinions change about anybody specifically after we had a lot of great, really close games?
Not really. Like, I think Penn State in the first half, they were showing that they're not as great as what their ranking was, but then they came on back. Penn State will continue to be good, not great under James Franklin. They will make the playoff this year. Ohio State, I've been down on Ryan Day. I think he's overrated. I know he's only lost like 9 or 10 games as the head coach, but he doesn't win the big games. So to see his team at the end of the game just look unprepared and have a lack of awareness, I can't say I was stunned by it. It's good to see Oregon get back in the good graces of the college football fan after their slow start to the first 2 games of the season against Idaho and Boise State, where people were questioning them. But I guess the biggest change would be Alabama. I know people could say, well, why'd you change so much of Alabama? They just lost to Vanderbilt. But after the way that they played up against Georgia in the first half, then a sloppy second half, what they won, to lose to Vanderbilt, hey, I'm not making any excuses. Vanderbilt just outplayed them. But then to follow it up and not be able to find that gear to just really crush South Carolina and wipe a lot of sweat off your forehead, I just don't know what to make out of Alabama. Now I kind of look at them and say, oh, a few weeks ago I thought they could be the national championship game. Now it's like I can't trust them in really any game the rest of the season, it feels like, even though I still think they're a good team.
Zach, thoughts on the mega matchup this weekend, Georgia and Texas?
Yeah, so I like Georgia. I don't have a good reason why other than the fact, like an X's and O reason, that I just feel like college football this year is how we used to look at the Pac-12. Whenever we would fall in love with the team, they would end up losing in a week or two. I just think it's Texas's time, even though they've clearly been the best team in college football through the first 6-7 weeks of the season. I just think it's time for Georgia to kind of avenge what happened to Alabama and beat Texas. But then I looked at that spread and I saw it was like 5.5. I kind of feel like that's begging a lot of people to be suckers and plus the points. So I'm conflicted there, but I will give the slight edge to Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs just to continue what's been a cluster, you-know-what, of the college football season when we don't really know much about any of these teams with the way they've been playing.
Well, they hammered Clemson, and then we wondered if that was a big deal. And now Clemson's playing pretty well, although I'm not sure they've played anybody or beaten anybody. But Kirby will make sure everybody in his team, on his program, whatever the roster, that nobody believes in the Georgia Bulldogs, like he said prior to beating the hell out of TCU a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I know the game up against Kentucky, they won and they survived. And we kind of played that motivation card, right? Kirby was going to have that, and they came out just flat up against Alabama a little after that. But them being ranked, what, fifth in the country now? Yeah, that's a guy in Kirby Smart who hasn't had to do a lot of motivation the last few years. He has it, but there continues to be a lot of off-the-field problems with that program. And I think they just need some better leadership going on right now. Even though Kirby Smart's an incredible coach, like, he needs to start saying, hey, it's my way or the highway once again, because I think some complacency has settled in with that program.
Zach, Nebraska and Indiana this week. Does our guy, Matt Rule, beat an Indiana team that feels like that they're never going to die right now?
I would take the points on that one. I thought it was like a 6.5 point spread. I would plus the points on that one. I think this is coming down to a field goal, and I do believe it's going to be a fun game. A few weeks ago, a lot of people were on Rutgers. They thought Rutgers could beat Nebraska, and that was a sloppy, low-scoring game that didn't really deliver, but Nebraska was able to pull it out. This, to me, is going to be a really fun one because Indiana, with their new coach, they're rolling, and Dylan Raiola, we got to see him go back to looking like Dylan Raiola earlier in the season, where he's still been a great quarterback, but he's just shown some moments where it's like, hey, He's not a junior. He's not a senior. He's not Cam Rising who's playing in like his 17th year. You know, you're going to have those freshman moments, obviously, that do occur. Now it's time to shake off that rust a little bit.
Zach, Ohio State, Oregon was big-time college football at its best in a lot of ways, but interesting story coming out of that is now a mid-season rule change as a result of a loophole the Ducks exposed in that game. What are your thoughts on changing rules in the middle of a season?
Yeah, I don't like changing rules in the middle of the season, and I'm a big fan of Dan Lanning. I got a chance to know him well the last few years. He comes on my show all the time. But I was kind of surprised that he gave the smirk. Like, he didn't admit to it at the podium, but him giving that smirk basically said that, yes, it was intentional. So coach pretty much executed everything right until he gave that smirk. But I don't like changing rules in the middle of the season. That's just not something I'm with. I think you do that at the end of the year.
Zach, I know you've got this trained, so tell everybody what you're about to do. It's 6:08 your time. It's 5:08 here, and you're about to go into to watch Game 3 of that Dodgers and Mets series. So where are you right now?
Yeah, so I'm on the corner of Varick Street in New York City, which is next to the Holland Tunnel. So you could hear some lovely New Yorkers right now probably honking their horn as they're sitting in, I don't know, about 6 miles of traffic, and they haven't moved for about 5 minutes. I will then, once I hang up with you guys, walk down to the subway, which is like the worst thing in America, subway in New York City. And then once I get to Penn Station, I will hop on the Long Island Railroad, which is much better than the subway. I will get to the parking lot, eat some food, drink some beer, and then go cheer and be a huge fan, obviously, of my baseball team tonight.
Good for you.
Citi Field, by the way, one of my favorite parks to go to. Really great venue.
Oh, you've been?
Yeah, I've been. I went a few years ago. It's great. I love it.
Did you get the filet mignon cheesesteak? Usually I wouldn't recommend a cheesesteak if you're not in Philadelphia, but they do a Pat LaFrieda filet mignon cheesesteak, which is just to die for.
Yeah, I discovered that, and I was also not a outside of Philly cheesesteak guy until I had that one. It's very good. Zach, I saw one of your tweets this morning about Aaron Rodgers and his general managing of the Jets. How badly do you think that will end? With he's got everything he wants, but he hasn't maybe identified that he's the problem.
Well, it's going to end poorly. Like, the Jets could save some face here and go make the playoffs. I think that's a possibility. But the Jet fan was delusional enough thinking that they were going to go to a Super Bowl this year. They're not even going to an AFC championship game. The line still hasn't been fixed, even though they've made some upgrades this year. It's still a bad offensive line. Rodgers could still throw it back a little bit for a few weeks, but at the end of the day, he is a 40-year-old quarterback playing on one leg, coming off a major Achilles injury. So you go get Devontae Adams, it's the right move, but just look what he did with the coach. Everyone in America knew Robert Saleh wasn't fit to be the team's head coach this year, but Rodgers liked him because he controlled him. And then the moment when you had Robert Saleh kind of say, hey, the cadence needs to change with Rodgers, Rodgers basically like, bleep this guy, I'm going to get you fired, and then act like he had nothing to do with that. So, Aaron Rodgers, a heck of a quarterback, a first-ballot Hall of Famer, one of the 10 greatest quarterbacks of all time, but you will walk away being a bit disappointed with Aaron Rodgers, even with how great of his career is, because how he won that Super Bowl so early in his career. It's alarming how he's not been able to get back to another Super Bowl, let alone win another one.
Hey, man, go get down that tunnel. Go enjoy tonight. Enjoy the Mets and Dodgers. Zach, thanks for giving us time on what is a fun, personal, and yet amazing, the series, and possibly the Mets and Yankees in a collision course. We'll see. Thanks for your time.
You got it, guys. Be well. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, that's Zach Gelb with Infinity Sports Network.